Judge issues gag order in fraud case after Trump assails staffer on social media. New York, the judge overseeing a civil trial over alleged business fraud committed by Donald Trump and his company issued a gag order in the case Tuesday, barring the former president from making public comments about his court staff. The decision by Judge Arthur Engoron, announced about a day and a half into the trial, came soon after Trump posted on social media about a staffer for the judge and included a picture of the person. Trump had already spent a significant amount of his time outside the courtroom lambasting officials in the case, repeatedly pillorying Engoron and New York Attorney General Letitia James, Democrat, who brought the lawsuit. Engoron's decision amounted to a sharp rebuke of at least some of Trump's commentary. The gag order applies to all parties involved in the case, though it appeared aimed primarily at Trump. Speaking in court Tuesday afternoon, Engoron said he had issued a warning about such posts a day earlier. He addressed Trump's behavior by saying one of the defendants had shared a personally identifying post about one of his staff members. Engoron publicly announced his decision following multiple closed-door sessions with Trump and his lawyers as well as James and attorneys with her office. The judge said he had ordered the post deleted, and it appeared to be removed from Trump's Truth Social site by Tuesday afternoon. Engoron also warned that violating the gag order would lead to serious sanctions. During the midday closed-door meetings involving the judge, Trump's campaign sent out an email focused on Engoron that sought to portray him as biased, calling him a far-left Democrat judge. Trump's public response to the fraud lawsuit has continued his long-standing practice of responding to investigations and scrutiny by denigrating officials involved and castigating them by name, often in caustic, inflammatory, and bitterly personal terms. In this case, Trump has angrily called James a crook and Engoron a disgrace who should be disbarred. Trump is facing 4 separate criminal cases, and he has called Jack Smith, the special counsel overseeing 2 of them, a psycho who looks like a crackhead. This behavior is not new. During his first presidential campaign, Trump attacked by name a judge overseeing 2 lawsuits against him and then regularly criticized law enforcement officials while in office. Trump's reaction to the New York case has echoed the way he responded to the 4 indictments brought against him, as he has denied any wrongdoing in the cases and dismissed all allegations as politically driven. He has also consistently singled out individuals for criticism while relying on increasingly menacing rhetoric in his public commentary. Trump's tendency to comment on these cases in this manner has triggered a request for a gag order in one of them. U.S. District Judge Tanya S. Chutkan, who is overseeing a federal case accusing Trump of wrongdoing in connection with his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, is weighing a request for a gag order brought by attorneys for Smith. Attorneys for Trump have previously told Chutkan that he is a presidential candidate who has a right to respond to criticism and his rivals on the campaign trail. In the New York case, the gag order came on what was otherwise a fairly routine day of legal testimony from an accountant, with Trump looking on in person for a second day in a row. James has alleged in a $250 million lawsuit that Trump and executives with his company brashly misstated facts about his properties to get better financial benefits. Trump's side, in turn, said there was no one way to evaluate the worth of assets, insisting that there was no wrongdoing. Engoron last week issued a pre-trial decision ordering that Trump be stripped of his business licenses, which could wrest from his control dozens of properties, among them Trump Tower. The trial will determine how severe the ultimate penalties might be, with James asking that Trump and his company pay $250 million. The trial could last for weeks or months, and Trump may testify during the proceedings. While he was not required to attend the trial's opening days, Trump opted to appear in court and, on Monday, used the occasion to speak extensively to reporters before the hearing, afterward and during a break. He issued a fusillade of familiar grievances against the case as well as James, Engoron, and other officials investigating him. Trump, who is seeking the Republican nomination for president, also complained that the case was keeping him off the campaign trail. He returned to the courthouse Tuesday and repeated some of the same points he had made the day before, criticizing James and insisting that his properties were worth more than she had said. But while Trump repeatedly inveighed against the New York case outside the courtroom, the proceedings inside largely focused more on matters at issue in the lawsuit, the nuts and bolts of real estate valuations and how financial statements are created. On Monday afternoon and across much of Tuesday, the proceedings largely centered on testimony from Donald Bender, a longtime accountant for Trump's company and its executives. James's office has said it intends to prove that Trump, his adult sons, his company, some executives, and related organizations sought to issue false financial statements and commit fraud. Trump's attorneys have pushed back on those arguments, with Christopher Kise saying on Monday, "There was no illegality. There was no fraud. There are no victims." When Monday's hearing wound down, Engoron appeared to suggest that he was open to excluding evidence related to older transactions, which Trump's attorneys had argued should be dismissed from the case based on a recent appellate court ruling dealing with statutes of limitations. Trump took Engoron's comments as a victory, saying to reporters immediately after that much of the Attorney General's case might be dismissed, which one of his attorneys echoed. James's office later challenged that interpretation. On Tuesday morning, before testimony resumed, Engoron began the proceedings by saying he wanted to clear up any misconceptions that might have arisen over his remarks, and added that he would not be dismissing claims in the case, as Trump had suggested could happen. Soon after, Bender resumed his testimony, discussing things such as the agreements between his accounting firm and Trump's business. While questioned by James's office, Bender confirmed that the agreements would put the burden of providing accurate asset valuations on the company, not the accounting firm. When an attorney for Trump questioned Bender, though, they were critical of his accounting work and suggested that any misreported numbers were his fault. The attorney, Jesus Suarez, questioned Bender about the drastic misrepresentation of a Trump Tower apartment that had been reported as about triple its actual size, inflating its worth. "You're preparing statements of financial condition for the leader of the free world and you missed it? You never picked up the phone and said, 'I'm sorry?'" Suarez asked. Bender said the alternating values for the Manhattan home were an oversight. After Bender's testimony concluded for the day, the parties held another private meeting with the judge. A court spokesman said the private meetings at the lunch break and after court concluded for the day amount to non-public conferences that typically happen in a judge's chambers in civil matters. It was not clear why the issues were not discussed in open court. Leaving court Tuesday when the proceedings concluded, Trump did not address the gag order and told reporters he planned to be back the following day. Berman reported from Washington. McCarthy's gone. Republican dysfunction is here to stay. At 4:45 p.m., the gavel fell on Kevin McCarthy's speakership. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant, the presiding officer, Representative Steve Womack, Republican, Arkansas, announced after the 216 to 210 vote to oust McCarthy. From the front row of the gallery, I heard gasps from the floor. And then, from the Republican side of the chamber, a lone woman's voice, "Now what?" McCarthy, whose only evident ideology as Speaker had been personal ambition, has secured his place in history, the only Speaker in U.S. history to be voted out by his peers. His chaotic 9 months in the job was the shortest tenure since that of Michael C. Kerr in 1876, as the Bulwark's Tim Miller pointed out. But Kerr's speakership ended because he died of tuberculosis. McCarthy, by contrast, was knifed by his fellow Republicans. This is why Tuesday's events are much larger than McCarthy, for they made it clear, if there had been any doubt, that the Republican Party has lost the ability to govern. McCarthy's term began in chaos, with his 15 rounds of balloting. It lurched from crisis to manufactured crisis, with a needless debt ceiling showdown, failed votes and pulled bills on the floor, recriminations and name-calling in Republican caucus meetings, the launch of impeachment proceedings on fabricated charges, and last week's near shutdown of the government. Now, it is ending in chaos, with Republicans openly savaging each other on the House floor and all legislative functions ceasing while the majority party tries to pick its next leader. Under continuity of government procedures, designed for terrorist decapitation of the government rather than partisan zealots offing their own speaker, a pre-designated speaker pro tempore took temporary control of the House. That man, revealed to be Representative Patrick McHenry, Republican, North Carolina, did the only thing he could. It would be prudent to first recess, he told the body, so that leaderless lawmakers could meet and discuss the path forward. The House won't return for an entire week. Good luck with that. It doesn't really matter who Republicans choose to replace McCarthy, who announced late Tuesday that he won't run again. Nobody will succeed in that role because the party itself is ungovernable. McCarthy's final day as Speaker proceeded like the others before it, in a leadership vacuum. It was clear that there were more than enough hardliners supporting Representative Matt Gaetz's Republican, Florida motion to vacate that McCarthy would need some Democratic votes to keep the speakership. But he offered Democrats nothing for those votes. This sealed McCarthy's fate. Democrats unified against McCarthy at their own caucus meeting, after which the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, New York, made it official by saying it was up to Republicans alone to end the House Republican Civil War. On the House floor, the Republican combatants seemed ill-equipped to defuse the latest crisis they had created. Indicted Representative George Santos, New York, lifted up his sweater to reveal to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, GA, his SpongeBob SquarePants tie. Representative Lauren Boebert, Colorado, played with her infant grandson. "We need a speaker who will fight for something, anything, besides just staying or becoming speaker," said Representative Bob Good, Virginia, one of the rebels. McCarthy snickered and whispered with the member seated to his right, Representative Juan Ciscomani, Republican, Arizona, Representative Tom Cole, Republican, Oklahoma. The genial chairman of the Rules and Administration Committee pleaded with those who are willing to plunge this body into chaos and this country into uncertainty. Retorted Gaetz, "Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is somebody who we cannot trust with their word." McCarthy drummed the armrest while Gaetz spoke, put on reading glasses, and perused his phone, then resumed whispering and chuckling with Ciscomani. Republicans laughed, booed and heckled Gaetz as he spoke. Representative Mike Garcia, California, called the rebels Republicans running with scissors and supported by Democrats. Representative Tom McClintock, California, warning of a paralyzed House, said, "Democrats will revel in Republican dysfunction and the public will rightly be repulsed." Foreseeing grave danger to the country, he prayed, "Dear God, grant us the wisdom to see it." Gaetz, only good, and Representative Andy Biggs joined his side in the debate, parried his GOP colleagues with one-liners. When Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, New York, improbably claimed that this Republican majority has exceeded all expectations, Gaetz quipped, "If this House of Representatives has exceeded all expectations, then we definitely need higher expectations." Representative Garrett Graves, Republican, Louisiana, spoke bitterly of Gaetz using his motion to vacate to raise campaign cash. "It's disgusting," he said, and cries of shame came from the Republican side. "We need to stand behind the greatest speaker in modern history." Graves proposed, producing guffaws from the Democrats. Replied Gaetz, "I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership." As his fellow Republicans jeered, he added, "Boo all you want." "You're no martyr," a Republican heckled. "No, he's not." Gaetz, with his arched eyebrows and slicked back hair, looks the part of a cartoon villain. He's more of a street thug than a legislator, and in his 7 years in Congress, he has done nothing but tear things down. But this street thug made quick work of McCarthy. As the clerk called the roll, the doomed speaker, sitting in the same seat he occupied during January's 15 ballots, could be seen sitting silently, staring straight ahead. It's just a matter of time until Gaetz, and the many others like him, render McCarthy's successor a failure, too. This is all they know how to do.